Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of This Is Our Life. My wife is taking a nap, so I'm trying to be quiet. Sorry you don't get a good picture, but I don't have the lamp up here. So our daughter asked a question. What were the 60s like? Well, baby, I started kindergarten in 1969. Mommy would have started first grade in 1969, so did we smoke weed? No. Did we listen to groovy music? If you consider listening to It's a Small World After All and Winnie the Pooh and things like that to be groovy music, yeah, we listened to that. You've seen some of the pictures of me on Okinawa. And I had a Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett outfit, costume. I thought I was the coolest thing in the world wearing that. There are these hippies that, okay, behind the houses, this was on Mashinado Military Dependence Housing Area. Now it has another name. Actually, it may not even be there anymore. Anyway, behind some of the houses, like the houses that backed up to each other, and not all the houses did that. There was like this area, this like cinder block sort of area where you put your garbage cans. And so when we lived on Cleveland Court, we didn't have that in our backyard on Cleveland Court, or actually we never had that in our backyard. Because our backyard like backed up to a creek or something like that, and there was a fence back there. I think there was a fence back there. Anyway, so these hippies, if you will, it was like the hippies were always the children of the highest ranking officers. You know, the colonels and generals, people like that. My father was a major, so, you know, he was kind of like in between. At that point, he was still on the fast track to being at least a full colonel, maybe even a brigadier general. But that all ended when they got divorced, which was not my father's fault. My mother was the one who wanted that, so she moved to Houston and run around with women. Anyway, so these again, hippies, I mean, you know, they were probably teenagers. They cornered me and some of my friends. They told us they were kidnapping us. So I sort of like, I got away. You know, I escaped. You know, that's what I thought. I was just a kid. And this would have been about 1971, 1972. And the first thing I did is I ran home. And I put on my coonskin cap and my David Crockett Daniel Boone outfit and went back over there because I thought I was tough, you know, I was cool. So I went back over there. They were gone. Everybody was gone. But yeah, I loved that outfit. Boy, I tell you what, I wore that for years. As I think my mother sewed it for me, and she did that when we lived off base before we ever moved on to base. So, you know, that was like in nursery school I was wearing that. And we left when I was in second grade. So, you know, I went to Mashinado Nursery School and Mashinado Elementary School. Although Mashinado Nursery School was private, it was off base. Mashinado Elementary School was on base. We used to watch the B-52s. They would take off from Kadena Air Base, which was north of us, because we lived right on the north side of Naha, which is the modern capital of Okinawa. And Kadena Air Base is north of there. And what they would do is they would usually take off going east and then make a really sharp turn south. And they'd fly right over our house. And the landing gear was still down, which tells you how close they were still to the base, to the air base. and you could see the pilot's head. I mean, you could actually see the pilot's head, or mostly just the helmet, but you could see part of his face. Sometimes, anyway. It would, I guess, depend on the sunlight and what time of day it was and stuff. They were loud. I mean, I'm telling you, they were loud. When they're barely off the ground, they're loaded for bear, mind you. I mean, they're on their way to Vietnam to bomb Vietnam. So they're heavy, you know. They're loaded. They're you know, you didn't want one of those things to crash. And we had a couple of them crash in Spain. You know, but those two crashes had nuclear bombs on them. Thankfully, those things didn't go off. Otherwise, I might not be here today. Well, I think those two happened after we left. But my hometown would be uninhabitable today. Even though it didn't happen in my hometown, but you consider the radius, it would have been bad. And that's when there was this huge air base northwest of Madrid. And, I mean, huge. And after the first or second crash, the Spanish government told the U.S. military, "You're out of here." They closed that air base because the agreement was no nuclear weapons in Spain. You know, so that base got shut down. Now, if it ever reopened, I don't know. Maybe Spain took it over as an air base. But you know, that's 60s, 70s. We moved to the United States in '72, which would have been second or third grade for me. We left when I was in second grade, so I guess that fall I would have been going to third grade, but I wound up in Austin State Hospital. My life in Texas wasn't the best. That's nothing against Texas. It's just my life in Texas wasn't great. For other people, it is great. Gosh, the 60s. You know, I was in Spain, Germany, Okinawa, and Virginia. When my dad was in Vietnam, we were in Virginia. My mom and I were in Virginia. The only thing I remember from that, it was Christmas time. And we lived in Alexandria. And anyway, it was Christmas time, and I'm sitting there in footed pajamas, all these presents under the tree, and that's all I remember from Virginia. That's why I don't talk about it, because, you know, it was only temporary, although we lived there for a full year. My mother told me once that she turned around once and I was gone. And she ran around frantic looking for me. I had run outside of the house by myself. I'm a toddler, mind you. And I had run down the street to the playground. She wasn't happy about that. Somehow I opened the door and ran down the street to the playground. We had a senator and a American-style football, you know, a coach for, you know, American-style football, who lived in our neighborhood. We lived in a split-level house. I don't remember all those things. All I remember is sitting there at Christmas time. I'll tell you, on Okinawa, this is during the 60s, this is our last off-base house, typhoon was coming in. Those things, you think a hurricane's bad? Wait till you've been through a typhoon. One thing you'll never forget is the whistle. Oh my gosh. Those things are huge. They're much bigger than a hurricane. And how some of the Okinawans survived those typhoons is beyond me. You should have seen some of the houses, if you want to call them that they lived in. But anyway, so you know, it's my father put boards up and taped the windows and put boards over the windows, and you know, made sure everything was anchored down and put inside and all that. Typhoon comes through, then the eye hits, so all of a sudden it's like the feeling, the physical feeling is really weird because the pressure change is so dramatic. And my dad, he was going outside just to make sure everything was okay, see if he hadn't needed to really quickly, you know, hammer a nail or screw a screw in, or you know, whatever, see if there was any damage or whatever. And I'm like, Daddy, can I go outside, please, Daddy, come on, please, I'll be okay, Daddy. And he said, okay, real fast, you know, just for a second. And I went out there, and I remember looking up at the sky over to the west. It was just really eerie, because you can see the China Sea from our house, because we lived on top of a hill. But I took karate. We did that in the school gym. That was after, it wasn't during school, it was something else. It was, you know, it was Shurin Ryu style, not Shuri Ryu, but Shurin Ryu style. I still have the uniform, I just don't have the patches anymore. You weren't allowed to keep the patches if you quit. I had to take karate, I had to take piano lessons, because any army officer's son has to learn to do those things. And I didn't like either one. I had to learn how to bow. My sister had to learn how to curtsy. I loved going to the officers' club. Fort Buckner's Open Officers Mess. It was up on a hill. And I loved going there. If you've looked at the pictures that Mommy put up, you'll see me at a swimming pool. That's at the officers' club. You'll see me sitting on top of an anchor. That was at the officers' club. They had, when you went in, they had a coat room where you would give your coat to somebody, and they would like give you a tag or something so you could get it when you came out. Well, they also had this display case, and they had in jars, they had oysters with a pearl, and you could buy those. Remember, Dad took me went island hopping. There was this one island called Ishima, not Iwo Jima, Ishima. It's where Ernie Pyle was killed, not Gomer Pyle, Ernie Pyle. You know, look him up, Ernie Pyle, P-Y-L-E. So vivid, because my father's reading the monument to me, because there's a monument located where he was killed, and I just, gosh, it was so vivid. It's like I was seeing it. There's a place called the Lily Tower, which isn't a tower, it's on the main island, but it's a cave. We had one in the neighborhood on base. The first on base house we lived in, there was one of these caves nearby, not behind our house, but behind somebody else's, between their house and the school. And it's like you just walk up to it, it's just all of a sudden there's a hole. It goes a little ways in one direction and further in the other direction. And there's this place called Lily Tower, which is south of Naha. And what happened was during World War II, and my father was a veteran of World War II. My step-grandfather from Hempstead, Texas, was on the battleship Texas during the war. Our chaplain on Okinawa, Mr. Stanford, who's buried at Fort Sam in San Antonio, he was just a regular foot soldier during the war on Okinawa. You know, and 25 years later, he's back on the island, this time as an officer. But the Lily Tower, once the battle for the island started, see, there were two places. One was Okinawan school children, which was the Lily Tower. The other place was Japanese school children who were on field trip from mainland Japan. And once the battle started, you know, all of a sudden everybody just, got to his safety as best they could. And this was a cave that these teachers and students went in. And eventually there was the landing. They called it Love Day because it was L Day. After D-Day, they stopped using the designation D for landing day because it was just so many people died. So on Okinawa, landing day was called L Day. Well, a lot of the soldiers started calling it Love Day because there was virtually no resistance from the Japanese. They just started walking ashore. There was some minimal sniper fire, but that was about it. And I remember seeing interviews with some of these guys, and they're like, they were walking through this field, and all of a sudden this ACAC, and ACAC is an anti-aircraft gun, opens up, and we look behind us, and we just thought it was bushes. We just walked by that 30 seconds ago, and now it's shooting at our aircraft, and that's how good the Japanese camouflaged. There were anyway, so these students and teachers go into the cave to hide. These are Okinawan, and yes, there's a big difference between Okinawan and Japanese. Anyway, so the Americans, once they get to that location, they get down there and they're like, they holler down there, anybody down there, and they say, yeah, students and teachers, well, y'all have to come out. They had a translator, and they're like, no, you'll kill us, or you'll do this, or because the Japanese made them think that the Americans were going to do horrible, awful things to them, and they refused to come out, and they were told, if you don't come out, we're going to have to kill you. And they still refused to come out, so the Americans lobbed hand grenades down there. After that, the Americans went down there to see what it was, and it was school children and their teachers. There wasn't a single Japanese soldier down there. That's what war really is. There was a Japanese bomb shelter, command bunker, that they had started digging out while we lived there. It was thick concrete. The steps going down were circular, and the steps were at an angle. So, like if somebody threw a hand grenade down there, instead of it going all the way down, it would hopefully eventually. It was a neighbor. It would, catch it. So they were still digging out. You could go down there, but there were still parts of it that weren't dug out, and they found uniforms and artillery shells and stuff down there. Anyway, I'll end this now. Bye.